He's your camera guy.
I'm Michaela Cooney. I'm a professor of criminal justice here at Tusculum University, and we are here today to talk about strength and unity as part of NCAA's Diversity and Inclusion Week, and talk about the impact of the last 50 years of Title IX and what that looks like moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Michaela Cooney, for visiting with us today as we come to you in your office. And we want to talk to you about, Title IX and the last 50 years of Title IX and the changes that you kind of see forward. So we kind of have some questions for you today. So Title IX is celebrating 50 years of great work, okay? Can you tell us about the insight of this 50-year journey into Title IX?
So Title IX was part of the educational amendments passed in 1972, and just as a little bit of a backstory for this, because it speaks to why this was such a significant piece of legislation. Indiana Senator Birch Bayh introduced this legislation, and it came on the heels of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It came on the heels of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and it was designed to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex. And so if you actually read the legislation, it's 37 words. So in terms of legislation, it's very short, but the impact that it's had is incredible. The idea was that those who were participating in educational activities who received federal funding shouldn't be discriminated against on the basis of sex. And so it was designed to increase representation of women, not only in athletics, but in higher education, in any institution receiving federal education dollars. So not only does this apply to higher ed, but it applies through the K through 12 environment. So it protects young girls, young women, and it's designed to prevent sexual discrimination, sexual harassment, and equity in terms of access for everything. It's typically associated with athletics, but it also includes scholarships, it includes programming, it includes individual classes, it includes housing assignments, and the programming that's offered to ensure equitable access.
All right, so it sounds like there's a lot of great things that's coming out of Title IX. And as the Title IX coordinator and a criminal justice professor, what impact does Title IX have on college campuses?
So there's actually a lot to this. Not only do we have to make sure that we are including in our recruitment materials, admissions materials, and scholarship funding, it affects all aspects of the campus community. And the goal is to ensure everyone has fair, equitable, and safe access to their education, and that they're not denied the benefits of that education. And particularly for women, we've seen the impact in the last 50 years of Title IX, just in terms of sheer numbers, of the number of young girls and women who are participating in athletics, and the processes that we have in place to prevent, to remedy, and to investigate sexual harassment and sexual discrimination, which this legislation was designed to prohibit.
That is awesome information. So what are some of the positives that are coming out of Title IX, other than just, protection for women and young ladies? What are some of the positives that you're seeing on college campuses when it comes to Title IX?
We're seeing greater reporting in terms of discrimination and harassment and prevention efforts. We've seen already the increase in the number of participants, particularly young girls and women in sports. We're seeing greater diversity in not only the student athletes, but in terms of coaches and athletic directors. And it's interesting, at one point, and I don't know if, I don't know if I should say this. At one point, the NCAA had actually, in the mid-70s, sued to be exempt from Title IX. And so it's interesting to see the movement from the NCAA to have greater access and greater inclusion. So we've seen, not only in terms of student athletes, but in terms of female sports, female coaches, female athletic directors, and seeing greater racial and ethnic diversity of those participants as well. We've also seen an increase in advocacy and college campuses taking responsibility and ownership for the safety of their community members and their campus, of their students as well.
That's very awesome to be able to see college campuses to be able to kind of get on board and understand this is a situation that can really benefit the university and to protect, all that are involved with Title IX issues. So what direction do you see Title IX moving forward in the future?
So what we're currently seeing, not only is there still a lot of work to do. If you look at this, we're still seeing some equity issues. We're still seeing access issues, and I think the 2021 basketball championship was sort of a linchpin moment for the modern movement in Title IX. But I think now we're seeing greater efforts for inclusivity related to the LGBTQ population, and particularly with discussions about access to sports for transgender athletes. So I think you're going to start seeing a shift into broader conversations and how we incorporate all identities and include them in all aspects of education.
Awesome. So myself, I'm the athletics diversity and inclusion designee. I also have with me Yako Masinga. He's a graduate assistant. I also have Joe, who's also a graduate assistant with me as well. How can we be advocates, or how can us as people who kind of work within the faculty and staff be advocates for Title IX?
So bystander intervention and knowing the policies and knowing the procedures is important. But if you see something, say something. And as trivial as that sounds, if you have the mechanism in place and you see something, if somebody's saying unkind things, if somebody's harassing somebody else, you can step in and say, hey, maybe don't say that, or maybe don't do that. And if you're out with friends and you see something, if somebody's uncomfortable, step in. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that. And if somebody does need help, there are resources that are available. So just encourage them to come forward, and we can work with them and find the resources they need to ensure that they can continue their education.
That was awesome. Professor Cooney, thank you for coming to speak with us during NCAA Diversity and Inclusion Week. It's awesome that we have you here on campus as our Title IX coordinator. As you can see, she's very informed about Title IX and can give us a lot of great information. So thank you for coming to speak with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.